Mike, check. Justin Hunt. It's all happening. Thanking everybody rocking with the channel. Thanking everybody subscribed to the channel, who shared a video, share what we're doing over here. It's priceless. Big thank you to everyone who's donated. If you'd like to donate, you can donate through the Cash App at the top or at the link in the description. And big thank you to my newest members. All my newest members, Amy Niebianchansky, I hope I got that right. Bucktooth, AC130, Sephora Bondle, KO, Bellamy J, Torch XG CFC, Mr. 2 Up, Moth Peak, Anthony Jones, Lee Entertainment, Brandon's Block, Elevin Lou, LH, Taipani Wiggins. 9-second applause. What? Thank you. All right, big stories today. Couple of things, quick notes and a couple of things. There's two stories out there I'm just not ready to cover yet. One is a lot of weird Drake stuff that really has my antennas up with how weird it is, along with the timing of it. So I'm still looking at certain things that are around that. And also Lupe's AI. Lupe's AI project. I'm looking at that project. I'm looking at that story too. Now, you guys know I rock with Lupe Fiasco over here, and I rock with AI. So you guys know where I stand on both of those before this topic comes up. But he is doing something that's really interesting. And so I want to make sure that I have people who are in position to properly contextualize what he's doing involved in that conversation. So those are two things that I've been asked about quite a bit today. And I want to make sure that you guys know where I stand on those. Now, first, up front. So I actually kind of feel bad for Joey Badass a little bit right now, because Joey Badass came out, put a flag down, represent New York, talking about quoting Jay-Z, saying too much West Coast dick licking, trying to get New York active. Also, he's in album mode, and captured the conversation for exactly one day. And then here comes an odd Drake leak that captures the conversation. And so, but there are a lot of things that are around New York hip hop that really are fascinating to me and I think are really interesting. And so on this channel so far, I've done a reaction to Joey Badass's The Ruler's Back. Check it out if you missed it. And I also reacted to Read My Soul's video on his project with Joey Badass's The Ruler's Back, which really looks at New York from a demographic shift standpoint and a macro standpoint. So, but I don't know if that's the end of the discussion. It certainly isn't for me. And so one of the things I did after I looked at the comments in the videos on Joey Badass that I put up, there was a few of you who said that J. Cole is the king of New York. J. Cole's the king of New York. Now, that felt very interesting to me because I don't think so. And I wouldn't say J. Cole would say that he would feel like the king of New York either, but I understand what they mean, right? He's been in New York for a long time. He went to St. John's, even though he's from Fayetteville, North Carolina. His rhyming style and approach and the way he makes music feels like it falls off the New York hip hop family tree in a lot of ways. And, we also have a history of artists who may not be from a place who end up representing a place. Tupac is one of those people, for example. DJ Premier is another person like that, for example. And J. Cole definitely fits within the New York ethos, in my opinion. So I ran a Twitter poll. I need to do more of these. So I did a Twitter poll, and I asked, is J. Cole the king of New York? Is J. Cole the king of New York? And 73% said no. 73% said no. 1 second applause to y'all. Right, and so that was actually reassuring. But 28% said yes. J. Cole's the king of New York. And shout out to Dr. Proctor, my finance professor at Wofford College. He told us 5% of anything's a whole lot. Okay, so 28%, that's a lot. That's a lot of people who look at J. Cole as the king of New York. Now, they might be J. Cole fans and just want to expand real estate, but away from that, I do really think that there is I don't want to say a power vacuum in New York, even though I kind of feel that way. I think it might be a bit strong, but there is a representative vacuum on a mass appeal level. Not saying New York doesn't have a whole bunch of incredible MCs. I mean, you could go to New York and throw a rock and hit a rapper, even still with all the demographic shifts, right? But they don't have someone who is truly a viral champion, a mass appeal champion, a person who's a champion that also can make hit records. We probably haven't had anything like that since Pop Smoke. I look at Pop Smoke's project, the last one he released before he passed, as probably the last great New York rap record in terms of like away from cats who we've already come to love, away from Rock Marciano, away from, Rome Streets, away from a lot of the things that Griselda's doing, even though they're outside the city. And then away from that, I actually really look at Stove God Cook's Reasonable Drought. And I know he's from Syracuse, but my man got into that Blueprint bag, something beautiful. And so as a result, you have 28% of the people who responded to this poll on my Twitter account with only 2,500 votes saying J. Cole's the king of New York. So after that, I saw a viral tweet that listed top 20 current New York rappers. Now, this tweet went relatively viral. Okay. Now, there's some real questions on here, but I think it's an all-encompassing list one way or another, right? So number 20, you got Mid-Eastern, 19, Ito. 18 is Joey Badass, which I think really speaks to the reality that Joey Badass hasn't been focused on music over the past 10 years. Hasn't been as focused on music over the past 10 years, right? And also, hey, you can't just go out and fight the champ. You got to work your way up the ranks. 17 Mooch, 16 Riggs, 15 Sky Zoo, who continues to put out fantastic projects, continues to put out incredible projects. I mean, I can't think of the name of it right now, but the project, I think it was last year, the one that was all about snowfall, the Snowfall Project, incredible. 1 second applause. 14 Method Man, 13 Fab, 12 Conway the Machine, incredible lyricist. 11 Vado. Is Vado making music? I don't know, but I haven't heard anything recent from him. 10 West Side Gun, 9 Che Noir, 8 Stove God Cook, 7 Jadakiss, 6 Benny the Butcher, 5 Styles P, 4 Rock Marcy. I have a GOAT piece on Rock Marciano. Check it out if you missed it. 1 second applause for Rock Marcy. 3 38 Special, 2 Lloyd Banks, 1 Rome Streets. Now, Rome Streets to me is probably the best. He's probably the rapper who's rapping the best right now to come out of New York. Obviously, this list includes people who are from outside the city. And Rome Streets probably has if Rome Streets wanted to, he probably has the best opportunity to step into that spot. But sincerely with these guys, despite how incredible they are lyrically, there also is a connotation to making hit records or making records that appeal to the masses when it comes to who's really on top on any kind of list. Whether you're talking Big Three, whether you're talking GOAT list, whether you're talking King of New York, mass recognition, mass awareness is something that is part of that equation. And outside of the legends who are up here, who have had hits in the past, who are, champions from a different era, who are still active and still putting out incredible music, there is a severe lack of big records on this list. And I think that's what speaks to this broader conversation. This is why Joey Badass is coming back to say, the King of New York is here. Because Joey Badass, in my opinion, truthfully is the best positioned to maximize his talents, his reputation, his history. 1999 might be one of the last truly great New York records. Not to say, in terms of from a new artist or a new, movement that's coming in, it might be. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it's on a very thin list. And Joey Badass is also young enough. And he has mass awareness and mass appeal enough. And he has crossover experience and a crossover reputation. And I think that's one of the things that makes it intriguing that Joey Badass did this. Now, I was on Rap Roundtable. 1 second applause for Rap Roundtable. And so we were on their channel yesterday. And shout out to Jarv, Sincere, Mace, for having me. It was a really great discussion. They're a fantastic podcast. Check it out if you missed it. And so we were talking about Joey Badass and, reactions and conversations around him planting his flag, but also state of New York hip hop. And I offered an idea about what Joey could possibly do. Like take something that captures the energy of Reasonable Drought, for example, and bring in different people from all these different sections of New York hip hop and put them on the album in a cool way. And so check this reaction from Rap Roundtable. Then you take, Rome Streets, and then you take whoever it is at the different sectors and make really palatable music that connects, that embraces the diversity of New York City. That to me would be the best possible outcome, right? I think that New York needs a leader who can get people to work together. Right, and I say that because, one, away from just GNX, California, especially Southern California, a lot of these projects are made by committee, and I'm not talking about writing the lyrics. What I'm saying is, if you look at, a Terrace Martin, a Thundercat, a lot of these people are brought into a project when it's in its creative process, to at least give input or give what they see or add their talents in different ways. We covered a story on this channel where Terrace Martin was explaining how he got in, how his jazz music ended up on To Pimp a Butterfly, for example. And so one of the things that happened was he came in and they played him the album and he was like, guys, I don't know what you want me to do with this. I don't know what you want me to do with this. You don't want to put no jazz on here. And they were like, hey man, just play what you feel and understand that you're making music that's going to help people. Right. That was one of my favorite quotes from last year, to be honest, from Terrace Martin. But there's a lot of music by committee. And we really see it on GNX in terms of how all of the different new artists from different sections, different sets, different waves that are happening in LA have been maximized or given looks to help maximize what they're doing. LA in general does a lot of that. It does quite a bit of that. And that's what I'm saying New York should do more of. Check Sincere's response.
That's tricky in our city, man.
It's real tricky.
Well, what I was going to say is that's not really how New York works, though. You know what I mean? Like before the fact.
That's not the way New York works, though. All right, I'm going to come back to that, but check this out.
It's a good idea, though. It is a good idea.
Yes, it is a good idea. But as a New Yorker, I got to feel like I know there's motherfuckers looking at Joey Badass in the city like, nah, but hold up. How does he feel like he's next up? Like we're next up over here in Queens or we're next up over here in the Bronx, or you know what I mean? Because like motherfuckers there's always going to be some type of like what borough is the best, right? Before you even take a battle to the West Coast or to Atlanta or to wherever, you got to battle motherfuckers in all the boroughs. You know what I mean? And you got to get past them and you got to get past, whatever competitive energy is coming your way from other motherfuckers in the city.
Great point, right? And that speaks to, I think, why, at least in that one viral tweet listing New York rappers from the New York area, it seemed like Joey Badass was 18. So him planting that flag and it being as loud and resonating, especially it resonated out here. For that to happen, Sincere is speaking to how cats in New York probably feel about him doing that too, right? All right, check this.
And this is where, look, I hate to say it, but this is where like sometimes I agree about how people say like motherfuckers in New York don't really get along. And it's not that we don't get along. We could get along, like we could party together or whatever. But as far as like coming together for a common cause behind one leader, everybody's going to want to be the leader, bro.
That's how New York's always been, right? I mean, you know, what was happening Uptown wasn't necessarily the same thing that's happening in Brooklyn. Rockefeller wasn't the same thing as Bad Boy. G Unit wasn't the same thing as Murder Inc. New York is a big enough place where you can have a whole lot of different movements happening in that regard. But what Sincere is saying is the truth, because every one of them has somebody who's trying to be the king of this whole thing.
And another
thing,
need
a clue tape. Who gonna make the clue tape then?
Those DJs, I think we mentioned it like a month ago. Like K-Slay is missed. The clue tapes are missed because the clue tape used to be the melting pot. The K-Slay tape used to be the melting pot of all the boroughs, all the guys from the swag rappers to the street niggas. We don't have that anymore. And granted, they'll say there's the internet, but it's just like sometimes the internet ain't enough. You need someone to curate. And Funk Flex is a little bit older, and I feel like radio is a tricky barometer. Like we understand the benefits of radio, but it's just like the business of radio doesn't lend itself to unknown artists or regional acts, especially in New York City.
Very great point too. Right. I got a text from an executive last week after the video I dropped reacted to Read My Soul's take on what's happening in New York. And he points to the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Now, those of you who follow my channel for a while, you know that I've done a lot of pieces that refer to that. My piece on with Ninth Wonder on Illmatic and De La Soul Stakes is High and how that was the split. That's really where the underground starts in a lot of ways, right? But the Telecommunications Act of 1996 allowed for consolidation in the media space. That's where you go from 20 radio stations to 3. That's where you go from 20 record labels to 3. That's where you go from 20 TV stations to 3, right? That's just what it is. And that's the environment we're in right now. And New York really suffers from that. I would argue New York suffers from that more than LA and Atlanta do, because LA is the cultural and media hub on the West Coast. Atlanta is the music hub, cultural hub and music hub on the East Coast. And then New York itself is the financial banking hub, of course. It's one of the biggest radio markets in the country, of course. But the companies that own, the same companies own all radio stations in all those cities. Okay. And if you're in Atlanta, you're probably like Southern music in general, Southern rap. That Southern swath, South is whatever parts of Virginia to whatever parts of Arizona in a lot of ways, right? You get all the way to Oklahoma and Texas, all that's the South. And on the West Coast, there's 70 million people, maybe 100 million people that are west of Minneapolis. So New York in itself has to share more real estate with different things. So it does get tricky from a radio politics standpoint, which is what Al was pointing out to me.
I feel like they're going to play what gets spins to keep the advertisers happy. So it's kind of difficult. That's why you will see a Cash Cobain go crazy, because his sound lends itself to radio play, dancing, club, etc. Like when we were talking about Griselda, and that whole issue with Griselda, it's just like they don't make records for the radio.
Boom. And they don't make records for the radio. And that's one of the things I pointed out in the beginning. This conversation is fantastic. I put a link in my community section. I'll put a link in here in the description too. But I think this last point, they don't make radio records. And that really is the thing that I think about when I think about the history of New York City hip hop, whether we're talking about Rick Rubin, whether we're talking about Large Professor, whether we're talking about Q-Tip, whether we're talking about the Hitmakers, whether we're talking about Just Blaze. I think it's from Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, but from that tri-state area. When I think about all these different crews, all these different movements, they all had DJs and producers in their camps, and they were the ones that were instrumental in crafting a lot of these classic albums and defining a genre, defining multiple eras. Truthfully speaking, a lot of what we come to love when we look at New York hip hop really is at the orchestration of the producers and the DJs of that era. Rest in peace, DJ Clark Kent. So I don't know if that's the same. It certainly doesn't feel the same in New York right now. It doesn't feel like the producers and the DJs are leading the way. I mean, Pete Rock has a Grammy nomination this year with Common. Okay. Pete Rock, from Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Troy. Okay. Mecca and the Soul Brother. Right. Pete Rock's been doing it so long, and he found a way to do the same thing with Common. Now, I'm not saying that all these legendary producers need to do the same for the new artists, but I do think there is something to having people help craft an album. And a lot of West Coast artists do that. Not even just Kendrick. A lot of West Coast artists do that. Even Problem and Jason Martin's Chupacabra that came out last year is a great example of that. I'm not certain how much of that is happening in New York. I feel like there's a lot of, oh, that's a dope beat, let me rap on it. But in New York, to Sincere's point, yeah, people aren't going to just follow some leader, right? And that's one of the things that's always been the case with New York City. And one of the things that New York City did, and I think because of that, you ended up having all these different thrones, these different tribes that were really held together by the power of the DJs and the producers who were helping the crews craft the records. I'm not sure if New York City has that now, but I know for a fact that Joey Badass is in the best position in the best position to do that. And he's only 29 years old. And whatever project he's coming out with next, I truthfully hope that that aspect of New York City history is included in the strategy as he puts that project together. Because I can't wait for the city to come back. Hip hop is better when every region is moving on all cylinders. Let me know what you think about all of this. My name is Justin Hunt. Like, subscribe to the channel, follow at The Company Man on everything. It's all happening.
Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. The mathematical breakdown of this mighty game of rap we in. It's boom bapping in. Systematical culture views, it's radical, it's all happening. Shaking hands and dapping it. Life through the lens of hip hop, from trip hop to yes, dog, you don't stop, you don't stop. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all